This is Lama Tantrapa. Welcome to the Secrets of Qigong Masters, the talk show brought to you by Academy of Qi Dao, the first and only school in the world offering professional education in Tai Chi and Qigong Coaching. To find out about programs offered by Academy of Qi Dao, and to learn how you too can become a certified Tai Chi or Qigong coach, please go to QigongCoaching.com. The show is also brought to you by Mastery Magazine, sponsoring the Summits of Qigong Masters, bringing to you some of the top experts in Qigong and Tai Chi in North America. To enjoy watching and listening to the interviews with our guests, please go to QigongMasters.com. Today, I have a delightful opportunity to discuss personal development with one of my apprentices, Stefan Hoover.
Hi, Lama.
Hey, Stefan.
What about personal development do you want to talk about today?
One of the things that most people are curious about is probably what the heck is personal development and why would we want to bother with it?
All right. How do you define personal development?
Well, I would call personal development a process of developing not just the personality, but actually going beyond your personality. It's almost like when you think of what personality is, it's like a mask. A mask that most people wear, perceived by others. And if you want to portray a certain persona, which as a matter of fact is the word derived from the ancient Greek theater, where the actors apparently were not very good actors, and so they had to wear these masks that would portray either a sense of joy or fear or anger or whatever, sadness. They basically were wearing those personalities. The persona, the mask, is something that we don't want to just develop as a bigger mask, as a prettier mask, as a more appealing mask. We want to wear it down. We want to make it thinner and eventually disappear so that the true face would be revealed.
So when you call personality a mask, are you saying that it's something that can be changed from time to time?
Absolutely. Have you heard of people with multiple personality disorders? They obviously go through that change unbeknownst to themselves, or even despite their best efforts not to shift from one personality to the next. Some of them may have just two and just kind of flip, It's like some people may have love-hate relationships with others. Or you may also know that there is such a mental health condition as a manic-depressive personality. So that basically means when the person flips from, let's say, a manic state, where they're really excitable, really talkative, or perhaps can't even sleep, and then they crash and go into depression. They switch from one personality to another. And the switch happens either on a more or less regular basis, or sometimes it may be triggered by some events in a person's life, or sometimes even a certain trauma. And so that essentially means that we're not just stuck in one personality all the time. We may experience changes, shifts, and that also means that personality is not something fixed. And that means we can work on it. Hence the personal development.
Are you saying that there's some kind of link between someone's personality and the mood they might be in?
The mood is obviously a more subtle wrinkle, so to speak, on that mask. So the mood can maybe differ by a degree or two, as opposed to a personality switch can be almost like a radical 180-degree shift. So in other words, the person may go from a more sad to a more depressed mood. Well, that obviously is not the same as switching from being manic to being depressed. The same also, obviously, not only depression, but mania. It has different degrees or different shades to it. So somebody can be not necessarily manic, like just completely out of the gourd, but it can be very functional. As a matter of fact, some of the top leaders of the industry are known for being manic-depressive. Obviously, they don't operate very well in a depressed state, but when they're in a manic state, in the manic phase, they can talk anyone into anything. They feel tremendous amount of energy. They work around the clock, so they hardly rest or sleep. But then, of course, they crash because you can only work around the clock for so long. And so that basically means that they go through different phases or shades of their particular mood or their particular personality as they progress along that cycle, if you will.
So if personalities are like masks, and if a mask is a fake personality, how do you go through the process of taking off the mask to be your real self?
Well, in a sense, it's almost like peeling the layers of the onion skin. So you peel one off, oh, there is another one. All right, well, let's peel that one off. Oh, there is another one. And so you keep on going, exploring what's below this layer. And these layers also are associated with certain developmental stages. So we basically develop these layers or these traits of personality at certain points in our personal history. So, for instance, if a person went to school and, let's say, got bullied, well, then they will develop a certain trait of their character that was a survival mechanism for them to survive being threatened or in danger, real or perceived. And at the same time also, they may feel like, well, this particular layer of my personality is hampering my success. Or maybe it makes me so fearful that I cannot get into any intimate relationships, and so on. So that basically creates the motivation for personal development, because if something is really stifling your progress in life, you probably will be highly motivated to get rid of it, or at least to change it.
And so that would have to do with a change of your personality?
Absolutely. If you become less fearful, do you think that your personality becomes different? If you used to be, for example, bullied, and then, let's say, you started practicing martial arts, you learn how to kick ass, become a superhero in your own eyes, do you think you'll experience a different personality?
Makes sense.
Of course.
But how does that translate into someone's personal development?
Well, that's an example of personal development. So, for example, if you transition from being a fearful person to being a courageous person, that's a change in personality. How it occurs may have to do with letting go of certain beliefs or attitudes or assumptions about life. So we all have our own belief systems and value systems that we accumulated usually from a relatively young age. And from a young age, essentially get them indoctrinated, or sometimes we call it domesticated. So much so that that's our personality as far as we're concerned for the rest of our lives. Unless we actually go through the process of peeling some of these traits of personality or beliefs off and letting go of them, or transforming them into something else.
So how does one exactly peel off the layers of their personality? How does one actually go through the change?
Well, an example, again, would be, let's say, being fearful. You actually start asking yourself, is what I'm afraid of a real threat, or it's an imaginary threat?
So it has to do with what someone believes to be true.
Well, what one believes to be true, and also if you discover that you are reacting to imaginary threats, you have a choice to be reactive or to be responsive. By that I mean, you may recognize, okay, I am being dramatic and fantasizing about what may happen wrong. You know, a lot of things may go wrong. And if I just keep reacting to all of these thoughts, all of these images or mental projections, I will be constantly driving myself insane because I'm going to be constantly freaked out. That's also what we would call anxiety attack, or just being very anxious as a person. And so if you recognize that it's making you very anxious and uncomfortable and takes a lot of energy and ruins the quality of your life, wouldn't wouldn't you want to do something about it? And what you can do is to learn how to respond instead of reacting to those ideas or images that you have in your mind. Basically, those are a form of daydreams.
So what is the difference between responding and reacting?
Well, when you react to something, by definition, you're acting against the oncoming force. So basically, you are in a fight-or-flight mode. You know, fight-or-flight mode is that exactly what causes stress. It's not the stressors that cause stress. They trigger certain psychological mechanisms. Now, the question is, which mechanism is it going to trigger? If it's triggering the fight-or-flight mechanism of reactivity, then the person is going to experience more stress. If it triggers a response mechanism, instead of becoming more tense or more agitated or trying to get into a fight against whatever stressor comes, or trying to run away or trying to pretend it's not happening, like go into denial, you actually can assess, well, what is really going on? How can I adapt to this energetic experience? So we're talking about energetic experience because all of the events in our lives, real or imaginary, are essentially energy events, energy processes. So we learn how to pay attention to the energetic nature of these processes, especially if it's a daydream. If you're imagining that something terrible is going to happen or something pleasant is going to happen either way, it's a daydream. And everything in your daydream is made of energy, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's energetic in nature, then you can apply energy awareness and your energetic skills that you develop through practice of Qi Dao to deal with things more responsively and less reactively, and actually become a more responsive and responsible person.
So, in other words, the key to developing and changing someone's personality is about finding a way to positively respond to the things that they stress them out or the challenges that they face.
That's a very good way to start. Absolutely. If you are constantly in the reactive mode, even the idea of addressing your personal development is going to be driven by that reactivity, which means you're going to be reacting to certain traits of your character or traits of your personality that you discover, and then you will try to go to war against them. It's like somebody says, I just realized how angry I get on occasion. I didn't even know how angry I get, but now I know, and so I'm going to squash this anger. I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to suppress it or just cover it up with something else. And so that is going to be essentially a recipe for either driving this anger deeper, where it's going to fester, or simply cover it up, sugarcoat it, so to speak, so it doesn't appear to be as explosive or destructive. But at the same time, it's still going to be causing trouble either in real time or in the future. Instead of that, we could actually assess the anger. Say, okay, so on a scale from 1 to 100, how angry do I get? Or you can measure peace instead of anger. How peaceful do I feel when this happens? So my peace gradient goes down or my anger goes up when I'm challenged or when somebody attacks me or I feel maybe unjustly accused of something. So what do? Well, I can get into denial, for example, and pretend that like this anger is not happening and I just suppress it. Well, that's going to be, again, a non-responsive but rather reactive way of dealing with it. Or getting into a fight with anger and trying to beat it down. It's bad to be angry, so I'm going to just smack myself every time I feel angry. Well, I've met people who would do that. You know, self-flagellation, as a matter of fact, used to be a major component of some spiritual disciplines. I don't think it really helped people become more enlightened in the final analysis. So what do we do instead? We will learn how to either reroute this energy or perhaps even transmute it. By transmutation, I mean, instead of being angry at somebody unjustly accusing us of something that we didn't do. We can look at it and we say, so did I really do it? Well, no, I didn't. And this person is thinking that I did something that I didn't do, and they're unjustly accusing us of that. Well, so they're just operating on the basis of misinformation. So we experience compassion for them instead of anger. For example, if you don't understand what you're talking about, okay, fine. I can help you figure it out. And as a matter of fact, maybe we even become friends if I help you out to see the truth instead of operating on this misinformation basis. It happened actually in my life more than once. I know that it's possible to overcome all kinds of conditions if you just simply respond to them instead of reacting.
Could you teach us one simple technique about how to learn to respond instead of reacting?
Well, my favorite, of course, is relaxing under pressure. When somebody is pushing you, instead of resistance or tension, it's almost always more beneficial to relax under pressure. But you don't just relax like a rag doll or like a wet noodle. You relax and maintain alignment. So when the push comes to shove, quite literally somebody is pressing or pushing on you, instead of tensing up under pressure and basically pushing back, which is the definition of reactivity. You act against the oncoming force. You actually relax and let the oncoming force shape you in a slightly different shape and form, but at the same time not misshape you, but just simply turn you around slightly. You change your perspective. Physical perspective, meaning you're turning. If you change your perspective mentally, of course, that also works in the same way. You don't always experience physical pressure. You can experience pressure, for example, at work. A lot of people get stressed out when they experience pressure in the workplace. Well, instead of tensing up and becoming more stressed out, we can learn how to relax and become more relaxed and at peace, despite being under pressure. And so that basically means we achieve that by changing our way of dealing with oncoming force. Energetic projection, physical projection, or mental or verbal projection. And as we change our perspective, we may also see things differently, which of course will also give us an opportunity to include more understanding or develop greater understanding because we'll look at things from different angles.
So would you say that a lot of it has to do with your attitude about the circumstance that challenges you?
It's all about attitude, isn't it? It basically boils down to how reactive you choose to be. And it's not like black and white, you're either reactive or you're responsive. But you can literally experiment. What if I tone down my reactivity just by 10%? Let's see what kind of result I get. And what if I tone down by 15 to 20%? Well, let's see what kind of result that gives. What if I tone down by 40%? How's that working? If you learn how to adjust your reactivity or responsiveness at will, something really remarkable is going to happen. You become fully in charge of your attitude. You feel like you are not at whim of some uncanny forces that are affecting you, and you're basically reacting to them. You become a creator of your own experience, of your own destiny.
It sounds to me like a person who embodies those traits is someone who has been able to peel the mask of personality off of their face. Would you agree with that?
Right. And obviously, if we have beliefs or values associated with being reactive or taking things personally, then of course we will have a hard time responding. So peeling those layers of beliefs or those values off, or demoting those values to the bottom of our list of priorities in terms of values, would be the excellent first step. Like, for example, I'm familiar with either the books or the films, The Godfather. Mm-hmm. So the main character actually was at one point asked, "Why don't you relax? You don't have to take it personally." And he said, "Screw that! I take everything personally. Even if lightning strikes my house, I take it personally. I'm basically going to just take everything personally." He had that attitude. He actually had that as part of his belief system, that it's acceptable or somehow even beneficial to be that reactive. Well, if you're a mafiosi, maybe that's your predilection, and you just be as reactive as you can be, and maybe you will be a successful mafiosi. If you're not a mafiosi or a gangster, I believe it's more beneficial to be a responsive person rather than a reactive one.
So to make it very simple and clear, reaction is more like a negative idea and response is more of a positive idea.
I don't know if I can put it in this, again, black and white way of looking at things. I would say, because you can measure these kind of on the scale, you can say that a high level of reactivity is associated with greater tendency to fight against what is. Basically, you are practicing inacceptance.
Oh, so it's about acceptance.
And the more accepting you are, and the more flexible you are and available to change, the more responsive you become. So essentially, acceptance is a prerequisite for responsiveness. Another prerequisite, which also is important to cover in our conversation, is attention. Because without being attentive, it's really hard to respond to things. They surprise you all the time, as opposed to if you pay attention, you can see them coming and prepare and adjust your course of action. So course correction is also an important aspect of personal development. Ability to course correct your attitude or course correct your perspective so that it's workable. And obviously that requires paying attention to the feedback. Well, if you are accepting of the feedback, then even feedback like pain or criticism or other things that may otherwise push your buttons or hurt you will be perceived as just that, feedback, as opposed to taking it personally, for example, and getting hot under the collar, or feeling pain and trying to run away from it and just taking painkillers. So we take feedback as the invitation for course correction. And when we correct the course or adjust our perspective, again, we check the feedback. Is it working better now? If it's working better, great. Now, what if I do a little bit more of that? Is it going to work even better? If it does, great. And then let's continue this experiment. If it's not working better or works worse again, well, maybe we can fine-tune what's going to work best. So basically, that gives us an opportunity to refinement of our personality, rather than just fixing it, if you know what I mean.
I feel like a lot of people have an attitude about themselves like they are paying attention, and yet they're still caught off guard by a lot of the circumstances in their life, which means they're not really paying attention. Is there some way that you can help us at home to be more attentive in our lives?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks to the development of modern communication, internet, and social media, the attention span of ordinary human being has dwindled to extremely short, narrow window. I've heard recently something that made me laugh, that the attention span of a goldfish was greater than average attention span of a modern human. I don't know if it's true or not, but it definitely is an observed pattern that people nowadays are very inattentive. Attention deficit syndrome, or ADD, is rampant, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what does it come from? It comes from inability to be in charge of focus of your attention. Basically being constantly distracted by things, or skipping from one point of attention to another, or refocusing attention, basically going everywhere and not dedicating enough time to one thing that would actually give you the ability to comprehend what that is, what's going on, or learn whatever you can learn from it.
So how does one learn to focus their attention?
Great question. I usually recommend starting with yourself. If you can pay attention to yourself for an extended period of time, you become an attentive person. And it also mitigates the whole issue of seeking attention from others, because as you may know, people who are not particularly attentive, they often are trying to get attention from other people. And the reason for that is because where attention goes, energy flows. So if you get attention from other people, you actually get fed some of the energy. In a sense, you become an energy vampire. Now, that also means that you will thrive only for as long as people pay attention to you. And you probably know some people, I've certainly met a few, who would do whatever it takes, say whatever it takes, or wear whatever it takes to attract attention of other people. That's because they get so used to receiving attention of others that they forgot how to tap into energy resources within themselves. And so they thrive on energy that they get from others. Now, being in the company of such people is very exhausting, because they just suck you dry energetically. It is also not very fun to be that kind of person, because you're constantly threatened by somebody removing their attention, and you will feel deprived. So essentially, what we learn is how to not be that kind of person. How to be the person who is not taking energy from other people, but rather focuses attention on oneself. When you focus attention on yourself, energy starts flowing where? Towards yourself. And when it does, it creates massive recycling of energy within your own system. When you tap into that flow of energy, then you no longer need attention of other people. You no longer feel like you're going to thrive only as long as people pay attention to you. You can actually pay attention to yourself and allow the energy to empower you from within. When you do that, you basically become self-reliant. You no longer act in a way that drives other people nuts, because you're no longer trying to grasp for their attention all the time. You also give yourself self-empowerment. So basically, you start developing a sense of being a more empowered person. You're not only feeling okay without attention and energy coming from others, but actually you begin to feel much more empowered in terms of being able to handle challenges that come your way, learn whatever lessons that life presents to you, handle your own emotional or mental issues a lot more effectively, and improve the quality of your own life. Who wouldn't want that? Now, also interestingly enough, if you pay attention to yourself, you can heal yourself, because bringing energy to particular parts of your body or specific systems of your body can actually empower those to work more effectively or heal up if they've been injured or compromised. So that means that you actually become more self-reliant also in terms of self-healing. And another really cool effect paying attention to yourself can provide is the ability to learn a great deal about yourself. How else can you get self-knowledge if you don't pay attention to yourself, right? If you don't pay attention to something, there is no chance to remember anything about that subject matter. And if you become both a subject and object of attention at the same time, you actually facilitate that, which is the key principle to many schools of thought or schools of personal development or religions: knowing yourself.
It sounds to me like a lot of the stress that people feel in today's society has to do with them not paying attention to themselves.
Indeed. And if you don't pay attention to yourself, you will feel like you cannot really control how reactive you are. You also may be unaccepting of yourself, basically beating yourself down for being bad somehow, or being weak, or being stupid, or ugly, or whatever you may blame yourself for. And that also means that you are not learning the lessons, because you're not really paying attention, since acceptance is a prerequisite for attention. So if you're not accepting yourself, you will not be able to pay attention to yourself, you will not be able to learn much about yourself.
I feel like that's a very common vicious cycle, is that people aren't wanting to look at themselves because they're afraid of what they'll find.
Exactly. And often what they think they're going to find is not even what they would really find, but what they've been told by others. In other words, they are afraid of looking at that mask that other people perceive them as.
So a lot of people have, in that sense, been convinced that they are what other people tell them they are, instead of what they feel themselves to be.
Well, so we're talking about identity now, which is the inside surface of that mask, which is what fits the face a lot better, often, than the outer layer of the mask. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that's your face. It's just another side of the mask. And what also happens is that the greater there is a discrepancy between who you think you are and who you're being perceived to be by other people. In other words, the greater there is a discrepancy between the identity and the personality, the greater there's going to be tension, or perhaps attempt to pretend to be somebody who you are not, or to portray a certain character that you want to play in this drama that we call life. If that's not who you are, obviously you're not going to be authentic. You may fool other people into believing that you are this way as opposed to that way, but it's also based on your intention, which is different from attention.
So if personality is the outside of the mask and identity is the inside of the mask, well, that would suggest that even identity is itself not exactly real.
Exactly not real, because it's what we think we are, which is often not what we really are. Or you would probably agree with the assertion that even if you know something about yourself for sure, it's just a tiny tip of the iceberg as compared to what there is to know about you. Well, if we are looking at the tiny tip of the iceberg and identify with it, and create identity based on all of that, and basically not knowing anything else about ourselves, that's not going to make us a very functional human being, because we're operating on just a tiny fraction of what there is to know. And those people who go through the process of personal development go inadvertently through a process of expanding their sense of identity, or developing a new sense of identity that perhaps they never even thought was possible. So, for example, instead of being a fearful or anxious person, you become a courageous person. You become your own superhero.
Then would you say that the key to dissolving the mask, so to speak, is about resolving the idea of identity and personality?
Well, you can definitely start with that. As you reconcile between identity, who you think you are, and personality, who you are presented to other people. And as the mask becomes thinner and thinner, so eventually identity and personality are almost the same. They also start revealing what's behind the mask, or underneath the mask. And that true face, so to speak, or true nature of yours becomes known to you, and you don't hide it from other people. You don't feel inadequate or afraid that other people would see you for who you are. But at the same time, you don't have to pretend to be better than you are. And so you essentially accept yourself for who you are. And at the same time, you don't stop at being that because you're constantly exploring and discovering more about yourself. And as you discover more about yourself, you share it with other people. So now they expand their perception of you. In other words, your personality grows along with the growth of identity. And that means it may never completely get rid of the mask, but it's not a big deal anymore. It's not weighing you down, so to speak, like karmic layers of emotional armoring that most people wear, that just so wear them down. It's so heavy and so difficult to even move with inside of. They not only limit your mobility, but also stifle you because they don't allow the put through of energy. So that's one of the reasons why there are so many energy arts practitioners and even teachers who talk about storing energy or condensing energy or manipulating it to go to, let's say, Dantian or some other area and operating like a battery. It's because they're blocked. They're not allowing the put through of energy through their system. Everything is made of energy. There's infinite energy circulating and flowing through everything. And if we are not open to that flow, then of course we are just operating on the tiny little amount of energy that we think is available to us. We identify with as the owners of that energy, which of course is silly. Nobody owns energy. There is no your energy or my energy. It's just our attunement to particular frequencies. And so what we do then is we become less stuck within the shell of this emotional armoring. And it become possible for energy to flow more freely through our system, empowering us as a result. So we don't get empowered because we store up more energy, we actually become better conduit.
So it's not about trying to bring more energy into yourself. It's more about removing the blocks that are preventing it from occurring naturally.
Exactly. It's just like breathing. There are so many people that teach various breathing techniques. And I usually say, look, what have you been doing since you were born? Have you not been breathing? Now, if you think that you've been breathing wrong, it's just simply a reflection of your attitude. Basically, judgmental attitude that divides things into good and bad or right and wrong. And if you think that you figured out how you should be breathing instead, well, most likely you're confused. Because what you think is right is just right from one perspective. Now, what if you actually, instead of trying to breathe right, what if you remove the obstacles in the way of natural breath? What can be healthier than breathing naturally? What can be healthier than being natural? Now, what we do is we basically stop being unnatural, and so naturalness flourishes. If we remove the obstacles or peel the layers of that mask that blocks the natural expression of who we are, being natural becomes the most healthy and most effective way to be. And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of personal development.
So I feel like a lot of people would consider that sort of thing to be a huge challenge and something that on their own they wouldn't ever really be able to achieve. Do you happen to have a method that anyone could learn to be able to do that and become more natural?
Well, absolutely. Being natural is one of the fundamental principles of Qi Dao. Qi Dao is my family's style of Qigong, also known as Tibetan Shamanic Qigong or Shambhala Qigong. And I would invite people who watch this video or listen to the audio to explore Qi Dao. It's about methodology for personal development integrated with development of physical body, with its strength, with its physical faculties, as well as mental development, personal development, and the ability to be in the flow. So, in order to get into this area of studies, all I need to do is just visit qidao.org or go to qigongcoaching.com. Qigong Coaching, obviously, is a methodology that I developed on the basis of my energy art of Qi Dao. And as you continue exploring, you may find that the opportunity to read some of my books, and obviously my books are not the only books on the subject of personal development, so please don't get indoctrinated into my teachings. Explore what is available. I also have a number of home study courses that cover a variety of different avenues to develop yourself. I also offer programs, certification programs for Qi Dao practitioners, and also certification programs for people who want to become Qigong coaches themselves. And obviously, you have to go through the process of personal development in order to become a certified Qigong coach. And we also have, in addition to that, a program called Personal Development through Dream Yoga. And we use the methodology of Dream Yoga as the catalyst for personal development. And that is the ancient art and science of becoming awake in your dreams. Obviously, you can experience significant breakthroughs and leaps and bounds in personal development as a result of becoming more awake. Well, awakening is also what we often refer to as enlightenment. So you start experiencing enlightenment, maybe in small increments, but it becomes a habit. And it turns your whole lifestyle into a journey on the path of enlightenment. So basically you become enlightened as you progress along the way more and more. It doesn't mean that you're going to stay enlightened for the rest of your life. After the most profound awakenings, you also may fall asleep, and that's okay. You just learn how to awaken sooner. You don't spend the rest of your life in slumber. You awaken more consistently to a greater degree for a longer period of time. And you start noticing, okay, I do these things, it helps me to wake up more. I do those things, it puts me to sleep. Well, then the course is clear, or the choice is clear. Do more of those things that facilitate greater awakening, you are going to experience it on a consistent basis.
All right. What is one practical thing that a person watching today could do to develop themselves a bit more?
Like I said, relaxing under pressure. When somebody is applying physical pressure to your body, learning how to relax and at the same time not get pushed over. It's also often referred to as being more centered. So there is a centering exercise that looks pretty much like this. You pivot from side to side, letting your arms swing around, but bring 100% of your attention to the axis around which you're pivoting, to the right and to the left. The more the axis of your rotation is in alignment with the center mass of your body, the more centered you become. Because just like a spinning top, if you spin a spinning top and its center of rotation is in alignment with its center of mass, it will stay balanced for quite a while. However, if there is any misalignment between the axis of its rotation and the center of mass, it will spin out of balance very quickly. Well, same with the human body. If you align the axis of your rotation, which usually happens to be pretty much along the spine, and the center of mass, which also happens to be along the spine, not in the front of the body, unless you have a big beer belly or you're pregnant. Center of mass is actually closer to the back. The backbone, obviously the densest part of your torso, is, as the name implies, towards the back. The hip girdle, or the pelvic girdle, is mostly towards the back. The shoulder blades, obviously towards the back. Most of the rib cage is towards the back. That's where the densest parts of the body are. That's where the center of mass is, towards the back, close to the spine. Now, as you pivot around the spine, something remarkable happens. Your body starts hanging on the bone structure of the skeleton, which means the muscles don't have to support you against the gravity. The bones are doing their work because they're now in alignment. And the bones that are in alignment can do their work effortlessly. They don't burn energy, they don't get tired, they don't get sore. Muscles, on the other hand, if they compensate for misalignment of the bones, they'll get tired, they'll burn energy, they'll get sore and eventually even develop energy blockages as a result of chronic tension. As you release those energy blockages and release the tension in your muscles, you will also feel like your breathing becomes deeper and smoother, or may have a sigh of relief. Because not only your skeletal muscle relaxes, but also the breathing muscle, the diaphragm, relaxes too. And that will facilitate natural breath. And then, when you become more relaxed and more aligned, when somebody comes over and pushes you, you will be able to do exactly the thing that you were doing to get into this state of being more centered. You will be able to swivel or pivot around the center of your rotation without being pushed over. Because statistically speaking, it's very unlikely that a person will be able to apply absolutely equal amount of pressure to the right and to the left of your center. So if there is more pressure to the left, that's where you're going to turn, to the left. If there is more pressure to the right, that's where you turn, to the right. No tension is needed. You actually relax under pressure instead of tensing up.
Could you give an example of being able to relax under a sort of non-physical pressure, such as the stress to succeed, or the stress to provide for your family, or be a better husband or wife, or a better friend, something like that?
Of course. So in most cases, when somebody says, you've got to be a better husband, or you've got to be a better provider, for example, for the family, often people have tendency to do one of two things. Either fight or flee. They either fight back and say, I am the better husband, what else do you want? Or they feel like, oh shit, I'm a really bad husband. And then they just try to kind of run away from that feeling of being a bad husband in somebody else's eyes, or a bad provider, or they basically go into depression or try to distract themselves from that uncomfortable feeling. All of these are examples of fight or flight, or reactivity. What would be an example of being responsive instead of reactive in this circumstance? Well, you basically first say, thank you for telling me that you would like me to be a better husband. I always aspire to be one. So how exactly can I become a better husband? What are the things, for example, that would make me better? And what are the things that are not making me better, or making me a worse husband? Is it true that I'm not a good husband? On a scale from 1 to 100, it's not just you're either good at 100% or you're bad at 0. You're somewhere probably along the scale. Well, what are the things that could allow me to move up the scale? Or what is it that makes me move down the scale? If you do more of those things that allow me to move up the scale, I'm going to become a better husband, or better provider, or better whatever. If I notice the cause and effect, then it's no longer a matter of reactivity. You accept it as a feedback. There is no judgment about how good or bad I am. It's more like a judgment about how what I'm doing is working. If I'm doing this, continue doing it this way, it's likely that it's going to continue going in the same direction. If I want to go in the same direction, obviously that's the course of action. But if I want some other results, doing the same thing would be a sign of insanity. I actually need to do something differently. What is it that I need to do differently so that I will get different results? Well, let's experiment. Basically, again, we start exploring paying attention without intention. The only intention we have in this case is intention to discover something that works.
If someone feels like they could really benefit from your coaching, how would they find out more about you, and how would they be able to sign up for one of their programs?
Well, obviously, QigongCoaching.com is a very good website to visit to find out more about my coaching. And on that site, there are several options what kind of coaching to receive. So, for example, one of them is from pain to wellness. As the name implies, it's for those people who experience pain. Often it's a chronic pain or recurrent pain. And they would like to experience greater wellness. And in order to experience greater wellness, there are certain coaching methodologies that I'm going to apply. that would help my coaching client to transition from being in pain or constantly struggling with certain health issues to develop greater vitality, becoming more energetic, becoming more becoming healthier, and also developing the ability to improve their quality of life on their own, not only depending on me all the time. Now, those people who become healthier or experience greater wellness, they may also apply this to something that they are interested in. For example, there's another application of my coaching that goes from stress to being in the flow. So if you realize that stress has been bugging you down or causing you a lot of grief, you probably would want to let go of stress. What's the alternative? Well, if you're not reactive, you become more responsive, experience greater flow. Again, it's the coaching methodology that can help you experience greater flow and freedom from stress and suffering. If you travel along this path, obviously, you're not going to become stress-free instantly, but you start perceiving stress as a feedback, and you start appreciating it for what it does. It tells you how something is working or something is not working so well. Now, there is also another application of Qigong Coaching that is for those people who want to create something in their lives, perhaps even experience high performance. So it's from burnout to high performance. Those people who have been either working all their lives or they've been trying to do something in the context of sports or martial arts or other activities often feel like they've reached a plateau and they either burned out and they start backsliding or they're just not progressing anymore. Well, that's exactly where coaching comes handy. And you develop the ability to experience high performance on a consistent basis, and you also develop greater ability to tap into the resources that perhaps you didn't even know you had, and also develop resilience, ability to spring back after falling down, so to speak, or recover from setbacks that you inevitably experience in your life. And the fourth is the application of Qigong Coaching for those people who actually are interested in personal and spiritual development, and it's called from spiritual seeking to self-realization. Basically, as I mentioned, we are on a journey of empowering and enlightening ourselves. If we travel along this path, we experience self-realization. It's not like you're going to get self-realized one day and boom, from that point on, you're enlightened. It's more like you have a moment of self-realization, an aha experience. Great. Let's remember it. Let's build upon it. Capitalize on the fact that you experienced it. It doesn't mean that you will never backslide or fall asleep again, but at least you'll be able to use it as a next stepping stone, and that basically becomes the journey of progress along the path of self-realization.
Well, since our conversation today has been mostly focused on the personality, it's safe to say that personal development as an idea goes far beyond just working on someone's personality. So if the focus of our topic today has been personality, it's safe to say that personal development goes far beyond just personality. What would you say someone looking to develop their personality, what would be the first step for them to contact you?
The first step is to go to qigongcoaching.com and download the first chapter of my book, free of charge. Just enjoy reading it. If you like it, get the whole book. And if you really like it and you want to work with me on an individual basis or in the context of group coaching, you will be able to join our group coaching programs or sign up for an individual coaching program. Basically, when you start with something as simple and as intelligent as this, you already give yourself a nice little boost to move in the right direction. As you read the first chapter of my book, you will see that I'm talking about a very intelligent way of improving the quality of your life by implementing such simple principles as being natural, as being attentive, as being in the flow, and being awake. These four simple principles actually encompass quite a bit of the structural foundation of our body of knowledge, or at least form the framework for it. And from there, of course, we go into specific applications that may be of interest to you, or you may feel like you would like to explore the entire range of possibilities. And I would be more than delighted to have you join our apprenticeship program if that's what you desire.
Do you have any closing thoughts to share with our audience?
I would certainly say that personal development is not something that stands alone by itself as the discipline. I think personal development is something that can enhance any discipline or any activity that we engage in. So we don't want to just develop our personality for the heck of developing personality. But we start looking at how is it going to improve the quality of our lives and the lives of other people. Eventually it boils down to not only improving the quality of our own lives and manifesting our own dreams, we also learn how to help other people manifest and live their dreams. And the more people you help manifest and live their dreams, the more they will start helping you manifest and live yours. So in a sense, it's a karmic reciprocity principle, where you create momentum not only for your own personal development, but for development of other people. And as a result of that, you experience greater quality of life for yourself and people around you. This, if any, probably would be my favorite way to close our conversation today.
All right. Thank you, Lama.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you so much for watching our video all the way to its end. I want to just remind you that there's an episode of our talk show, The Secrets of Qigong Masters, brought to you by Academy of Qi Dao. To find out about programs offered by Academy of Qi Dao and to learn how you too can become a certified Qigong or Tai Chi coach, please go to QigongCoaching.com. The show is also brought to you by Mastery Magazine, sponsoring the summits of Qigong Masters that bring to you some of the top experts in Qigong, Tai Chi, and related disciplines. To enjoy watching and listening to the episodes of our talk show, please go to QigongMasters.com.